In this video, we're obviously going to be talking about the classification of neurons, which is going to be a pretty short video and available, I guess better because it'll be available as a quick review instead of having gone through the last video. I decided to break it up into two smaller segments. So here we go with the classification of neurons. There are two different ways to classify them. You can see here structure or function. And there's oftentimes an overlap with if you know a neuron's structure, you can kind of assume what its function might be. The three groups are shown here, not in this order. A multipolar, this guy over here. Bipolar, which is the first one. And unipolar, which is this middle one. And just kind of some general locations or jobs of these things, although this is not absolute, and just to get an idea of their structure. They kind of explain themselves in a way, so just become familiar with them, not just their structures, but also what they're responsible for. That's what we're going to cover primarily in this video. No matter what, all of these neurons are, although they might look like they're doing different things, they're all sending a signal in one direction. In this bipolar neuron here are the dendrites we discussed in the last video. Dendrites for the unipolar, dendrites for the multipolar. That's where the signal is coming in. So for all of these coming in at the top, and the signal is getting sent down in all of these pictures to the bottom, and these would be the synaptic terminals, the ends of the axon that branch off to contact perhaps another nerve, especially if it's an interneuron, or perhaps a muscle if it's a motor neuron, or a gland. So we'll be taking a look at a little more closely how these guys work. The first two, multipolar and bipolar, just things to recognize. In general, these are typically motor neurons. So obviously motor is movement, so typically talking about skeletal muscle. Has many dendrites, you can see here, branching off the cell body, and one axon coming down to the synaptic terminals. The interneuron, the bipolar neuron, has one dendrite, or basically one dendrite that has branches, one process up here, another process down here that is the axon. So this branch here is not an axon. It can be easily mistaken. This is all dendrite material. The unipolar, which are pretty funky looking, the cell body is kind of off to the side here. This whole thing is an axon, so this is still just one axon. So for all of these, multipolar, bipolar, and unipolar, they all contain only one axon. It usually connects the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system, so this would obviously be located in most likely the spinal cord. And we'll kind of take a look at that a little bit later on. And again, there's one branch here that it would associate with dendrites and the peripheral nerves, and the other branch would associate with the brain or spinal cord, nerve tissue in the brain or spinal cord. Interneurons are, again, only found in the central nervous system. They're basically pretty simple. It's self-explanatory. They are connecting neurons. And the deal with these guys is, and we'll kind of take a look at some unique behaviors of stuff like reflexes. But in any case, they are direct impulses to correct locations for processing, obviously, in the brain, interpreting and integrating the stuff that we've already talked about a while back. And these interneurons can be either multipolar, which you see here on the left, or bipolar, which you see here on the right. Some functional differences between some of the ways that we classify, and you should be kind of familiar with this because we've kind of already talked about sensory integrative when we talked about the central nervous system, the brain, and motor neurons. So this is kind of all going to apply or be sort of review. So not only are neurons classified based on structure, but perhaps more importantly, what they are doing, direction that they carry the impulse, which direction is the information going to the brain or from the brain. So sensory neurons, as you might suspect, are going to be carrying information from the body to the brain or to the spinal cord. They're called afferent neurons, easily confused with the efferent neurons. And sensory neurons are usually unipolar neurons. You can see this picture here. There's the cell body, and then branching off to basically the axon that's going to interact with perhaps some area of the skin, receiving information from the environment, and then all the way to wherever this is going, somewhere off in the spinal cord most likely. So afferent is from the body to the brain, or away from, if you want to think about it this way, away from a stimulus. A for afferent, away from a stimulus, such as contact with something that your skin would be touching, which is a variety of things. The motor neurons are afferent or efferent is the way you can say this to remember it. And they're carrying impulses from the brain out to the effectors, which would be something like muscle motor neurons are typically multipolar, which you can see here. A typical peripheral nervous system cell body, the axon, long branch, then branching off into presynaptic terminals. This is a neuromuscular, or 4 neuromuscular junctions, something we've already talked about in the muscle unit, muscle fiber right there. And again, those myelin sheaths made possible by Schwann cells, insulating that electrical signal that we'll get to in the next section. So here's just a quick pop quiz for you. Answer the questions on your own, and then pause the video, answer the questions, and then advance the video to see your answers. And there you go. Key to remember, I guess one of the tricks here, all of those neurons that we discussed contain just one axon, although their structures might seem like they are more than one axon. So causing a muscle to contract obviously is motor, creating the sensation of cold, sensing, right, is sensory. If your brain is low on glucose, that is sensory. Causing the secretion of calcitonin, which is a hormone, which would be motor. And only found in the central nervous system would be an interneuron, typically in the spinal cord, connecting peripheral to brain. And that completes the classification of neurons.